Lines. The reason why the show is called Behind Enemy Lines, folks, is two things. One, me being from the People's Republic of New York, Ross formerly from this area, that we are Republicans behind enemy lines, but also as a tribute to Ross Galloway's service in the Guard. I'm not going to say what state, but in the National Guard. Brag on yourself a little bit and tell everybody your military background. I know that you're retired now, but tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Well, I'll say this, Gene. The two of us have spent more time behind enemy lines than Tim Walz. I could say that right now.
Ding!
It's kind of weird. My military background is almost, or I'll say it's very similar to Tim Walz, believe it or not. We both were in the National Guard. He did 24 years and retired. I did 27. We were both field artillerymen. We both wore the rank of Command Sergeant Major. I got to retire at that rank because I actually legitimately held it where he did not. Our units both got orders to go to Iraq back in 04, 05. I went and he did not. And I'm pretty sure that's where we're going to pick up today with, the differences between us two, I should say.
Right, now let's get down to business, shall we?
I don't think that either of us are here to denigrate his service. Well, let's start with that. I don't think that we're going to be here bashing about what he did, what he didn't do, but we want to clear up exactly what he did, at least according to what we're hearing in the press, and then differentiate that from what he's been saying. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, it's 100%. I mean, had he just ran around saying, I served temporarily as an E9, I retired as an E8 because I didn't finish the school I was supposed to finish because I wanted to run for Congress, and I did 24 years honorably, and if he never intimated that he actually deployed into a combat zone, he'd be a really legitimate politician, in my view, right? Even though he's on the Democratic side of the aisle. But as you're going to prove with various clips, that's not what he did, right? He blurs the lines to make people believe that he was deployed into, hostile or combat zones, really. And it's just not true. And that's right. Where we're going after him, right? Nobody's denigrating his service, but you can't blur the lines. Omission is worse than lying in some cases when it comes to this stuff.
But, and in a deeper sense, I want you to give me also the backfill about how Tim Walz is viewed by other veterans. We're going to be playing some clips from veterans that served with him, or at least say that they served with him. Again, we have no personal knowledge. We've done no verification of this. This is what's out there in social media and what's out there in the press. I think that the most damning evidence you can have about someone's leadership ability is the words of those who they sought to lead. And if these veterans are representative of the majority of the people that Tim Walz was leading in the military, he doesn't sound like a great leader to me. And I think we should get into some of those clips right now. I want to start with a veteran who served in the Minnesota Guard. His name is Paul Herr. And he had some comments. We cut them down. We found this on social media. I believe this is courtesy of Alpha Minnesota. Check them out on the Twitters. And let's listen to what Paul had to say here.
He uses a mythical rank that he wasn't allowed to retire with, that he never enrolled into the academy. He only maybe wore the rank for a total of 14 days on the ground. So he has zero experience in any sergeant. I was a sergeant major for almost 13 years. That's almost a career for some people. I did the time. I've been to combat, been back. Been at high levels, and it's very frustrating. We wouldn't be saying anything if he just would have retired, said he was a retired master sergeant, retired first sergeant, and just carried on about his business. The problem that we have with is that he's trying to get credibility with the military and with the public by fabricating some lofty position that in reality he never really held and he has zero experience at.
Okay, so Ross, I want you to go into that. You held this rank, you retired with this rank. This is the highest enlisted rank you can earn, correct?
Correct. As far as pay grades, E9 is the highest you can get. A command sergeant major is basically the highest you can get on the enlisted side. There's only one that is higher on paper. It is the command sergeant major or sergeant major of the Army. There's only one. He works at the Pentagon, right? But that's like a political appointment, right? So for all intents and purposes, E9, command sergeant major, that is the highest enlisted rank. Even the sergeant major of the Army is an E9, right? So
Gotcha.
his position that he would be higher.
Okay, so now what's the difference between a command sergeant major and sergeant major? Because that's ultimately what Walz retired as.
No, so the E9 in the enlisted pay scales have two ranks that you can hold. You can either be a sergeant major or a command sergeant major. They're both E9s. You have to go to the sergeant major academy for both of those ranks, right? A command sergeant major means you're in a leadership position, and a sergeant major means you're on a staff somewhere doing staff type work. I've done both of those positions. Command sergeant major a little more sexy. You know, you're the battalion commander or whatever level of command, echelon of command. You're the commander's senior enlisted advisor at that unit. So you can be at a battalion, a brigade, a division, and so on. So Walz wound up retiring as a master sergeant, which is an E8, because he didn't meet the qualifications to retire at E9.
This is getting a bit complicated.
So in order to make E9, you have to be selected, especially in the National Guard, by your state, right? Your state sergeant major, the highest ranking sergeant major in your state, selects you to go to the academy, right? The Department of the Army actually selects you to become E9, but in order to go to the academy to actually achieve and keep the rank, you have to be selected by your state sergeant major. And each state gets only a limited number of seats each year. And before you go to that school, which is 18 to 24 months, depending on when we're talking about here, 18 to 24 months long. In the reserves, it's probably a remote course. If you go in person, it's 6 months straight, right? So it's a very intense course. They brief you like, hey, man, we only got X number of slots this year. Are you 100% committed to going to this school and finishing and serving an additional 2 years at the rank of sergeant major to be able to keep it to retirement? They encourage you not to answer right away. Go home, talk to your family, think it through, see if your civilian job lines up with this. You come back, you give them the answer, and then you knuckle down you're committing basically to 4 more years, right? 2 years for the school, another 2 years in a duty assignment. Walz went through that. He agreed. He gave his word. And then he did not complete the course and retired mid-contract. He signed a 6-year enlistment contract, retired after 3 or 4 while he was supposed to go to the academy. And why did he do that?
Because of deployment. At least that's the word, right?
That's the word, right? They're playing games with the dates on that now. They're saying, well, the unit didn't deploy until like March or April, and he put it in his retirement in January or February. Here's the problem with that. At his rank, if he was indeed the command sergeant major of his battalion back then, the military or the Army specifically does something called a notice of sourcing, a NOS, N-O-S. A unit will get a notification of sourcing months before they go out the door on a deployment. That is to tell the unit you have X number of dollars to start training, do additional drills, all these things. So if he was indeed in a senior leadership position, he would have known months before deployment that thing was coming. So it's even all the more suspicious why he put in his retirement paperwork only a couple of months before the actual order came down to deploy, right? So to me, I would have to just say he ducked out of deployment, claimed he wanted to run for Congress. He went back on his word that he gave all the people in his chain of command that he would knuckle down, finish the school, and serve an additional 2 years.
Well, when you put it like that, sounds kind of shitty.
Okay, and now how does that look to the people under his command? Let's say that this notice of sourcing comes out. Everyone knows that they're going to be deployed, and all of a sudden your CSM puts in to retire. How does that look as part of the culture?
So can you picture this? Now, a field artillery battalion is somewhere around 500 people, right? And back then it was 500 men, because back in those days, females weren't allowed in the field artillery, most likely. So you're talking about 500 dudes from ages 18, into their 50s, possibly. All of them are reservists in the National Guard unit, meaning they have real lives. Some of them are in college, some of them are having babies, Some of them are, have demanding jobs where a deployment will actually cost them money. So now you have to wrangle 500 individuals to get them on board to go to Iraq. And it wasn't Iraq, in 2010, 2011, which was still dangerous, by the way. But we're talking about 2004, 2005, when the insurgency was going off the chain, right? We had to do that surge in 2008 to try to get it back under control. So for your senior enlisted leader in the battalion, the senior guy out of 500 people on the enlisted side, to duck that deployment, that is pure cowardice and could cause chaos in the ranks. The E9s, especially this E9 that you have on the screen, that are talking smack on Tim Walz, that's almost unheard of, right? To be E9, you have to spend so much time in service. You have to jump through so many hoops. You have to dedicate your life to the military and go to that demanding course. You basically join like a brotherhood or the E9 mafia. To talk crap about another one, they deserve it, right? Walz is not an E9, really never was, didn't retire at it, ducked a deployment and let his people down. And I could sense the frustration in this man's tone.
Like what you see so far? Go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. Also, leave us a comment and tell us what you're thinking. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another show. Here's another video from the Command Sergeant Major who actually succeeded Tim Walz. And he has a lot to say. And Ross, I'm going to stop this intermittently because I want to talk about describing the chaos that this CSM would have had to deal with after Walz retired.
So how pathetic his leadership was as a National Guardsman.
On a 150-year-old farm in Brewster, Tom Behrends hopes his tell-it-like-it-is style will finally get the attention he believes it deserves in Minnesota's race for governor. In a way, he's back again to wage a public war of words against Tim Walz.
Like I said, this was back when he was running for governor, so this is a story that's been out there in Minnesota for a good long while.
He abandoned us. I mean,
go ahead, what?
And what about when Kamala was supposedly vetting this guy? Either they knew this was out there or they didn't really vet the guy, right?
Or they didn't give a crap. Or they didn't give a crap at all. All right, let's get to see what I believe his last name is Behrends. CSM Behrends retired has to say.
What the hell kind of leader does that? I mean, he just, as soon as the shots were fired in Iraq, he turned and ran the other way and hung his hat up and quit.
We'll get to Behrens' new message for voters in a moment. But this all starts years earlier when Behrens says Walz's misleading statements about his military service first led him to come forward in the fall of 2018.
So you try to get this message out, but Minnesota's largest newspaper checks it out, says it's 100% true, but yet refuses to print.
When I hung the phone up, I said, what the hell is this, North Korea?
Back in 2005, a warning order went out to the 1st Battalion, 125th Field Artillery to mobilize for a mission to Iraq.
Is that what you were talking about earlier, the notice of sourcing?
So a warning order would come, yes, the warning order would come right after the notice of sourcing, yes.
Okay, does it come quickly on the heels of it, or like when you're about to be imminently deployed?
It could depend, right? If in 04, 05, it might have been kind of quick, to be honest, because they didn't expect like stuff to be that crazy.
Got it. Okay, let's continue on here.
At the time, Walz served as the unit's highest non-commissioned officer, but months later, Walz would retire from the Guard, avoid the deployment, and run for Congress. Tom Behrens was next in line for the position and was asked to take his place.
I was like, well, for Pete's sake, if this guy quit, and if I say I'm not going to do it, I mean, what the hell kind of leadership is that? If a company would say that we're going to deploy to Iraq or somewhere and you're going to be gone for whatever amount of time, and then a foreman just says, no, I'm not going. I mean, what does that say to the 500 people that work in that factory?
Behrens would go on to serve in Iraq on a nearly 2-year deployment as a command sergeant major. All while Walz began using that title as a congressman. Behrens says he first contacted Walz with his concerns, sending these letters to Washington. They all went unanswered.
Now, you were talking about how it's unheard of for people at this rank to go at each other, right? He's sending letters. So this guy gets into office while, I guess, Behrens is deployed for 2 years, by the way. And Walz is not responding back. Is this coming from him or his office, do you think? Do you think that Walz would have most likely answered if he was actually a man of honor, I guess? Or do you think maybe it didn't get to him because he was in office and they're protecting him, like the people around him?
I think Walz 100% knew, and whether he knew the letter existed or not, he would have done the same exact thing. There is no way that he thought that he retired as an E9. No way. I know his initial retirement paper actually did say it, and then a couple of months later, the Minnesota Guard caught up and did a correction to his discharge to put the correct rank as E8 Master Sergeant. But there is no way that Walz thought that he could retire at E9. Everyone that is getting close to 20 years in the military starts studying how to retire. As an E9, you have to be able to train your subordinates on what they need to do to retire. So he knew what the qualifications were to retire at that rank, and he knew he did not achieve them. Whether he thought he slipped one past the National Guard Bureau or the Department of the Army to retire at that rank, either way, unacceptable, right? He knew he was not a retired E9. He knew it.
And now let's talk about Behrends for a second. What kind of world of let's call it for what it is. What kind of world of shit did he walk into?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine going to war in a position that you did not hold up until a few weeks before you deployed, right? The command sergeant major's job, he's the senior enlisted advisor to the commander on all enlisted matters. He's also in charge of enforcing standards within the battalion, maintaining good order and discipline, and overseeing that all training is conducted to standard. So this guy, Behrends, just took a unit to war that he did none of that with, right? Because Walz was supposed to be doing all of that. And then on the day of the Super Bowl, the guy took a knee and dropped out of the game. Unbelievable.
Let's keep going.
But then we fast forward to the election in 2018 in Minnesota, and you try at that time to get people's attention with this story and also with what seems to be a very misleading statement that he continued to make about his service.
It kind of just sat there, when he was a congressman, he bragged that he was a command sergeant, retired command sergeant major. I'm the highest ranking person ever in the House, and all this lie that he was telling. The state of Minnesota came out after 2018, after this was exposed, and they said, well, he can say that he served as a command sergeant major, but he can't say he's a retired one because he's not.
And that's what he...
Now, this is also something that I know that you have experience in because we worked in politics together, and we've had candidates who have had military service, and they want to use that in publicity materials, either mailers or commercials or what have you. There are very strict rules about what you can say and what you cannot say when it comes to advertising yourself and your service for political purposes, right?
There are. I'm not sure Walz, other than the Stolen Valor Act, which came out well after a lot of this stuff, I'm not sure Walz actually violated any of that. You just can't really do anything that may imply that the Department of Defense is endorsing you as a candidate, right? You can use one of your old pictures of yourself in uniform, but you have to put a disclaimer on there saying that, I served, and this in no way implies that the United States Army or the Department of Defense is endorsing me as a candidate. But what you can't do is lie about awards or service or certain titles, right? So now you're in a gray area with him. That's why they issued that statement where I guess he could say he served in the position, because technically as an E8, you could even serve in the position, right? Let's say your sergeant major dies in combat. Well, the E8 that is under him will serve as a sergeant major for a little while until another E9 comes along or until that guy gets promoted. But does that mean he was a sergeant major? Not really, right? He couldn't retire at the rank. So I think Walz in a gray area. I know some of the videos you're going to play later. He's definitely implying, if not through omission, that he deployed to Afghanistan, right? Which is certainly not true. Provably not true.
Right. All right, well, let's keep going with this. This is a very interesting interview. By the way, guys, no matter where you are, I'm checking all the chats everywhere. So if you're on Rumble chatting, I'll be getting to you in a second. If you're on the YouTubes, we get the chats popping up here. Feel free to drop us a line here. We'll be glad to talk to you as well.
He was saying.
And he was saying that, and there was lots of public, lots of cards coming in the mail, for him to be elected. They said right on there he's a retired command sergeant major, just tooting his own horn, just hanging on the coattails of people that actually are command sergeant majors that went through all the process and put all the time in.
A spokesperson for the Minnesota National Guard said Walz wasn't able to retire as a command sergeant major since he failed to complete coursework and requirements related to the rank. Verified documents show the Army corrected his service record. Walz was reduced in rank to an E8 Master Sergeant after retirement and his conditional promotion. Alpha News again asked Governor Walz if he's using the command sergeant major rank on his campaign website for political gain this year. A spokesperson said this has been in the news before and pointed us to a past story where Walz said, quote, "Normally this type of partisan political attack only comes from one who's never worn a uniform."
It's stolen valor is really what it is.
Is it stolen valor or is that hyperbole?
It's damn close, right? But I do want to just go back to what his statement said. I despise when someone says something like, these type of attacks only come from people who probably never wore the uniform. What the hell does that mean, right? You can't have an opinion on abortion if you're not a woman. Like, these are just idiotic statements, right? Any objective person can have an opinion on this. You just showed a document that shows that they had to correct his rank back to E8, but on his own political website, it still says E9, right? So what, only military people can say something? Well, here's a military guy that you're interviewing right now, the guy who actually replaced him, CSM Behrends, right? So should we listen to him? Okay, we can listen to military people. Let's listen to this guy then. Where is Tim Walz, by the way? He gave a speech the other day saying the same thing, basically, that no one should denigrate his military service. I don't think anybody is, right? They're calling out his lies.
And I think that's where a lot of the hyperbole, though, is where people take it too far. Everyone in politics tend to take things to the nth degree. So when you use phrases like stolen valor, and that could be a debatable point, you're opening up vectors of attack from the other side saying, how dare you even say that, sort of giving up the high ground here, in my opinion, at least from the analysis of a political campaign. And while I understand that he served as a command sergeant major, and he could probably say that he served that, he can't say he retired as that, it feels dishonest, at least from the outside looking in, to sort of hide the ball and play word games like this. Being an attorney, I'm used to being confronted with word games all the time. So when I hear and see material like this, it gets me a little upset. Like, why are you playing hide the ball here? If your service is honorable, and clearly, listen, you were there for 2 decades. Can't just be defined by one moment. I'm sure he served well and I thank him for his service. But at the same time, you're going out there and you're saying things that are shaded, possibly true, partially true, true under a certain point of view. And it just frustrates me, especially now you're on a national stage and you're saying, this is who I am, and you're not being totally honest with me.
Yeah, and like you said, it's the quantity, right? It's not like he was sort of evasive one time or sort of vague once or twice. Like, the guy over and over and over again intimates that he was there and that he was a certain rank, and he wasn't. Like, it's just a lie. I don't know if you have the clip where he says, we need to ban these weapons of war that I carried in war.
And we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are.
What war did he carry a weapon in?
I can certainly get that in a moment.
How did he make that mistake?
If you like that clip from our new show, Behind Enemy Lines, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any other shows, and tune in live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time.